Welcome to College Football Roundtable, your source for college football coverage, including major storylines,
playoffs,
can't miss game previews, and picks each week. Join your hosts, Dan, Rob, and Jordan at the roundtable for a show unlike anything else. As for Football presents the College Football Roundtable.
Yeah, major thunderstorm here. Like, Jesus is literally outside my house, pounding on my front door right now.
Yeah. So we're live. We don't have anybody in here. We just had one pop on, so we'll get started. Hey, it's a different kind of show this week, friends. Yes, the rumors are true. The As for Football team is bringing you some Navy fans to talk about the midshipmen as we look towards the 2023 season. What's up, trash talkers? Welcome back to the Combined College Football Roundtable, or if you prefer, you can still call it Ring Knocker Radio. Again, you're going to get an extra helping of Ring Knockers this week again, because we've got not only Army grads on the show, but some Navy grads as well. I'm your host, Rob, in Fayetteville, North Carolina, outside of the renamed base that will always remain Fort Bragg as far as I'm concerned. We got Dano Ikebesa calling out of coastal Connecticut. Trigger Joe is getting his learn on, which is great. So he'll be around for the season, but he's not here tonight. We also have Sam, who you may know from their Twitter handles, Blue and Gold Report, and the Witty Midshipman. Hopefully Mark will jump on later. And then finally we have Dave Bethel joining in. And believe it or not, Navy actually does have old grads. And
here is Mark, so I'm going to add him to the stream.
All right, Mark is jumping in.
So
and
we have a legitimately full house now, and there's major thunder outside, so the gods have spoken, and they are not happy. But anyway, it's all good.
Yeah, so Dano's sitting in the eye of the storm, and I think it's because we have Navy fans talking football with Army fans. I don't know. That's probably very, very typical. And usually the only time we normally do this is either, via the socials during the season. But here's a great opportunity to kind of get together and talk. But why do we do the roundtable? Because we like to talk generally about college football. It's not always about Army sports. Here at As for Football, the As for Football show, Army football show, covers Army football and the things that are going on. But on the roundtable, we talk college football in the broader sense and the other service academies. And so rather than us giving our musings about what we think is going on at the Naval Academy in the off season, we have some pros here that are following the team actively. And the other reason why we do this is because this is to target the NCOs, the former NCOs. And that's why we have Joe on here, because Joe is he's our inside guy. He's a Big Ten fan from way back. However, he gives us some great insights when we're talking about college football in the season, because he has a different perspective. He's from Big Ten country. He lives like right up the street from the big house. So his perception of college football is a little bit different, as we all have different perspectives on the view of the college football. But we talk college football in general, and we'll give you more than about 5 minutes and keep you up to speed on what's going on with football. Dan, you want to do the commercial?
Yeah, so a not small part of why we're doing this is because Craig Oxane, Vice President of Residential Lending for Draper and Kramer in Chicago, has been 100% after us for a while to reach out to Navy fans, because some of you listening to this will know this and some of you guys won't. Craig is a member of the West Point class of 1994. He is a mortgage broker. He's licensed to lend in all 50 states, based out of Chicago. He's one of the biggest VA lenders in the country. And I don't know what's going on, but I do know that our target demographic here moves like every couple of years. That's part of the process. Like that's what's going on in all of our lives here, or at least if you're still in. So this mortgage process is super confusing. Interest rates moving all over the place. Like, now is not the time to deal with some clown who's just trying to make a buck off you, which, by the way, is most of them. So you don't want to deal with some mindless big box bank, some random website, whatever. You definitely don't want to deal with getamortgagefromchina.com. Like, this is how the West Point network, and to a larger extent this particular week, how the Service Academy network functions, right? Craig is helping us stay in business here at As for Football, and we're trying as hard as we can to help you guys get the best deal on a mortgage you can by introducing you to the dude that you need to meet. So, and yeah, Ray Kimball says he's amazing. I'll put that on the screen. Craig, listen, Craig does not charge lending fees for veterans. It's true for Navy vets, true for Army vets, even Air Force vets. That's a huge savings, like $1,300. So if $1,300 is not a lot of money to you, like just send that to me because that's a lot of money to me. So Craig Oxane, Vice President of Residential Lending for Draper and Kramer. Check him out. Links on our website. Go to askforfootball.com. He's right there. Fill out a form. You'll be talking to the guy in a couple of hours. And I'm telling you, no matter who you are, save yourself $1,300. Go with a dude that you can trust. Okay, so it's a commercial, but I'm telling you, I'm trying to help you. Anyway, go ahead. Let's talk Navy football.
Yeah.
Oh my God, I got a drink.
All right, we're talking Navy footballs. Yeah. So, guys, we'll start with Sam, Mark, and then Dave. Tell us your grad year, your company, and what did you do in the Navy, and then we'll get into a little bit why you start watching Academy football, or did you ever stop? You know, because you started the Academy and just continue, or what was that? So we'll start with Sam. We'll go to Mark, and then to Dave. Thanks.
All right. Hi, I'm Sam Blevins. I run the Blue and Gold Report. I graduated in 2021, but I was never in the Navy. I'm just a Navy football fan. Kind of started the page around 3 or 4 years ago, and it's got a lot of followers, which I'm very thankful for. So if anybody from Blue and Gold's watching, I appreciate your support.
All right, Mark, how about you?
Yeah, what's up, guys? Thanks for having me on. This is really exciting. I'm a 2001 grad from – can you hear me?
Yeah, absolutely.
Cool. 2001 grad, 24th company. Special hello to Bob Wilt and Rob Carpio, who are both Army grads that I've worked with in the past. I've always been not a former player, just a fan and definitely a Kool-Aid drinker. That's what you got here. I've had a great time following, especially really closely since 15. And I'm fairly new to Twitter, but had a great time on Twitter, getting a few followers, putting up some snarky stuff and showing the stats that I like to look up.
Nice. Dave, how about you?
So I graduated in '79. I come from Pennsylvania. I was a recruited basketball player, played for Dave Smalley, barely got out of there. Summer school every summer, unsat 3 out of 4 years, but I made it. And
God bless you.
Absolutely. It's a character builder. And so I'm up in Worcester training reserves, and I'm getting my master's. So I got a master's up there. I get a call from the monitor, from the detailer, and says, what do you want to do? I said, I don't know. He says, how about going back to the academy? I said, you know what my grades are? He says, yeah, we want you. So I went back there, and I had all the jocks. I taught econ, and all my sections would fill up early with pre-registration. And I walk in 5 weeks later, basketball, football, baseball, all of them were jocks, got them all through. And that's where I really, when I was a mid, we had McConkey and Nick Migas, and we went to the first Holiday Bowl. Great athletes, great friends still. But going back there and just working with the mids to get them through and to prepare them for their service was probably one of the most rewarding careers that I ever had. So that's my story, and I'm sticking to it.
Yeah, that's awesome. Go ahead, Dan.
No, it's just that's the Lord's work. That's excellent. Good job, Dave.
Yeah, and I think it's critical that like the fan base it covers all generations, and that's part of the reason why we're all here, because we're all in various different points of where we entered the academy. But I think one of the things that brings everyone together is watching college football. You know, and I can tell you that Dave and I send text messages back and forth every Saturday, talking crap to each other about the status of the game. And speaking of the status of the game, so how do you guys think Navy has looked over the last few years? I mean, I know that there's a lot of discussion, and we actually talked about it a little bit with Mike Buddy about being independent versus being in a conference. But what are you guys' thoughts? So we'll start with Dave, go to Sam, and then to Mark.
Well, you know, we cut our teeth and then we made our bones with the triple option, and now we're playing in a conference where they know what we're doing. They can prepare for it every year, and we were able to get through the first couple years. But Coach Niumatalolo stuck with that, and rightfully so. But it definitely put us at a disadvantage by going into the All-American Conference. You know, it's Navy football under Kenny was tremendous. He was developing leaders, and I just hope that Coach Brian Newberry, who was his defensive coordinator, can come in and give us the same quality of football and you know, Marines and Navy officers upon graduation. Because Kenny was a rock star. Our Marine accession, and I did 28 years in the Marine Corps. Our Marine accession was always greater than we had over 33% of all the football players, the seniors went Marine Corps, whereas
Wow.
the brigade itself was like maybe 17, 18%. I mean, so yeah, we were selling the Kool-Aid and they were drinking it, and they're still hanging around. So there you
Cool.
go.
Okay,
Cool.
Mark, anything that you want to pile on?
Yeah, like over the last couple of years, if you want to do a whole show on why I think Kenny Niumatalolo is still one of the best coaches in college football, I'd be willing to make all the excuses in the world for him. There was a lot of things that happened. I think there's a lot of things that happened in Annapolis that are unrelated to X's and O's that had an impact on the football program. And I don't think that I have a judgment one way or the other on how that was handled. I don't think that that's fair. But one thing's for sure. There was a confluence of tougher opponents and older football players in the other teams in the American Athletic Conference. And that happened at the same time that COVID had a large impact on our roster, to include, 6 seniors in 21 and 10 freshmen on the kickoff return team in 22. And throughout all that, I think you saw Ken Niumatalolo have some really good coaching jobs in season. When you look at our starting point in 21, to playing a competitive game against Cincinnati at home in 21, and a couple good wins late in the season. The same thing happened in 22 in season. I thought he did a fantastic job coaching that team, including improvements on the offensive side, even when we lost a starter in Ty Lavatai. But at the end of the day, I don't think it was enough. I think most of the voices in Annapolis were saying, and there are folks that I disagree with. I think most of the voices in Annapolis were saying, you're accountable for the football program, and that's wins and losses, regardless of conference, regardless of the changing landscape in college football. And all the while, they had a coach waiting in the wings that was certainly a very effective defensive coordinator. He appears to be ready to be a head coach, and he appears to be a really good fit at a service academy. So I think that also puts some pressure on Chet Gladchuk to make the decision that he made. Although I don't want to give Chet Gladchuk any credit, because I'm a Kenny guy. But he appears to have engineered a pretty good transition, maintaining, keeping a lot of the assistant coaches in place, including Ivan Jasper. And when that happened, and when we heard that Ivan Jasper was retained, it gave me some hope that there is a possibility to continue what we've done there from a success standpoint. And look, like, our schedule is not as easy as I had hoped when I actually looked at where teams finished last year, but certainly it'll get us back to the type of schedule that we were used to seeing in 16, 17, and 18, and away from the opponents that we've had the last 2 seasons. So all in all, I feel very differently than I felt on, Sunday, December 17th. I feel a lot more positive. I'm hearing good things about the character of the team in Annapolis.
Yeah. Well, Sam, you got anything to put a bow on this?
I mean, I agree completely. There's been a lot of drama, it feels like, in Annapolis. I mean, we had that whole Ivan Jasper situation a few years ago where he was fired, then he wasn't fired. And, honestly, I think that Ken did do very well in the circumstances that he was put in. I mean, the team was young. They were fighting hard. I mean, there were games last year that if they had begun at the beginning of the season, they would have gotten crushed. I thought Ken was doing a great job. But, I am optimistic with Coach Newberry. He seems a high energy guy. We're going to take a lot of risks. Somebody said in his press conference, I'm excited to see what's new, but it's going to be hard to replicate that success that Ken had over 20 years at the Naval Academy. I mean, you look at what he did, absolutely unbelievable, taking over for Paul Johnson. It's going to be difficult, but if there's one guy that can do it, it's going to be Brian Newberry. I'm excited to see what he's going to do.
I'm excited too, and just to circle back, 5 minutes after you all beat us up there, he's down in the bowels of the vet, and he gets canned. He could have come back. They could have done it the following week, the right way, if they were going to do it at all. He's on the last year of his contract. His contract would be over this season, and they could have let him do that out. He's the winningest coach in Navy football history. We had the 3 top teams of the All-American Conference. They're out of there. They're going elsewhere, Cincinnati and the other 2. And of the strength of the schedule, and we got a boatload of returning lettermen. I just don't get it, and I'll probably get hung out to dry for saying this, but it was not the right way to do it.
Well, we said this on our show, right? If he was going to do it, he had to do it now, because if you guys win 10 games this coming year, then he had to re-sign Ken to another contract. I mean, you can't fire a guy after he wins 10 games. So it was like now or never.
I'd be fine with it. I mean, he's the greatest coach in Navy. I think he's just the greatest coach in college football. Just his character, the way he goes about things. I mean, it's very rare to find a coach like that. And the players loved him. They didn't want him to go. I don't think anybody wanted to see him go.
Yeah,
What Gladchuck did was not. It wasn't cool at all. I don't think Ken deserved that type of disrespect in terms of just being told you're done right on the spot.
Yeah, I think
winningest coach in Navy football history. Winningest coach in Navy football history. And he gets nothing going out the door. Go ahead, Rob. I'm sorry.
No, you're fine. What I was going to say is, the biggest thing is jumping on this point is like he's the winningest coach in the history of the program. That would be like Alabama firing Nick Saban for losing 3 games. You know what I mean? Like, oh man, like Saban's gone. Like, what are we doing? Like the guy has a legacy of winning with your organization. I mean, for 17 of the 20 seasons that Navy had, they were able to beat their rival on the national stage. And so from that perspective, for argument's sake, and I am by no means a Navy fan, trust me, but I've watched enough college football to know that like you don't make a move in the front office like that unless it was that was predetermined outcome, I believe, regardless of what the record was going to be that season. So moving on, we observed Coach Newberry. We talked about how good he was at coaching the defense. He's the linebackers coach. The Navy linebackers always seem to be good. Like there's the next man up year after year. It's kind of like
very frustrating. Very frustrating in all honesty.
Yeah, it's a habitual thing that you see at both service academies. Like, all right, who's going to be Captain America this year? Like we're going to have this linebacker that's going to be a standout in both programs. And that's just kind of the natural ebb and flow of how the academies work. But I also think like some of the new coordinators are coming in, and do we think that those guys are going to be up to the challenge, particularly after, losing a personality like Ken? I think that's going to have some impact in the locker room for sure.
Yeah. Let me add on. I was reading, and apparently Grant Chestnut is going to be the offensive coordinator and the offensive line coach. PJ Volker is going to continue to be the linebackers coach, but he's also going to step up to be the defensive coordinator. Like, are we worried that these guys are going to be overwhelmed with, a lot of new responsibilities?
Initially, if you don't mind me jumping in, Dano, I thought yes. And yeah, I mean, initially I thought yes. Again, back to December, I was like, how is this going to work? Because you're not going to retain Ivan Jasper. You're going to need a new offensive coordinator who can somehow run the triple. And then you're going to need to find somebody who can be just as effective as a defensive coordinator. Grant Chestnut, as he was announced, to me I didn't know what to think of the hire. Kennesaw State has had a lot of success running the triple option, but if you look closely, they were 5-6 last year, or 5-6, I think. Really had a down year, and just read a little bit about it. I'm sure Mike James of the Mid Report will come out with a lot more detail on Grant Chestnut as the season gets started. He's terrific if you want to follow him. But the thing that happened that changed the tide, I think, for me is retention of Ivan Jasper. Let's not forget that even though the craziness happened with Ivan Jasper getting fired as the offensive coordinator, he effectively was the OC. If you talk to folks that are close to the program and really know him, they call him a genius. He's put 2 quarterbacks in the NFL, and he's still in the quarterback room. And he's got 2 quarterbacks with a lot of experience, and he's got a guy that they're incredibly excited about named Teddy Gleaton. So I think that Grant Chestnut, they said, brings a little bit of optimism as far as him being the offensive line coach. He brings an air of toughness. They played a lot of live reps in the spring ball. And so I think there's reason to think that we can be reasonably successful offensively. And I'm sure you're going to want to ask about the mix of offensive plays that we'll probably have in there as well.
Yeah, I do want to talk about that, but we'll give the other guys a chance. Dave, Sam, you got anything?
I mean, I'm looking at the defense. I think the defense is going to be completely fine. You're just bringing up PJ Volker, great guy, really, really gritty coach. He wants a defense that's attacking, get after the quarterback if possible. With the offense, there's going to be some new changes. I'm sure everybody wants to put a stamp on the offense, but I still want to stay mostly flex bone. I don't want to see too much, shotgun. That's not the identity. It hasn't been the identity of Navy for a very long time. And, I think the coaches are going to do well. I think we're in a position that will be relatively successful. It just depends upon, I think, late game situations, what the team's going to do. They're grown up 1 year because last year there were a lot of close games that they couldn't close. And if we close those games this year, we're going to be back in a bowl game.
Dave, you sounded like you were ready to move on from the triple.
No, I like the triple. I think it's a great offense, but you got to run it and you got to let it develop. It has to develop. If it doesn't, and that way you can run you can run the triple. If you go with your first option all the time, you're going to get shut down. So I think we're going to be okay. Ideally, as my my fellow alums have talked about, Ivan's being back there is going to add stability, and it's going to add a winning attitude to the offense, and that's key. He's a great man as well.
Yeah, I'll jump in real quick. And the one thing that I did say, like offensively, that I saw most of the season was the physical play. Like they turned it on towards the end. The fullbacks were pretty violent. I mean, towards the end of the season, and they were attacking the midline quite a bit. And so when you watch, Service Academy football, like the fullback dive is it. And that sets up all your variations off the triple. And it's not to be a remedial triple option class, but again, like the fullback midline is probably the most important aspect of those offenses. And if you shut that down, but you haven't developed the other opportunities. I mean, we watched as Army fans, we had split backs for days that never got utilized. And when they did, they're breaking 60, 70 yard runs. And we're like, well, where is that all season? And so I think one of the difficulties of having a new offensive coordinator and a new head coach is, am I willing to hand over the reins to that quarterback? Now, I have confidence in my quarterback coach because Eisman's been there forever, but do I put the hands into the new upstart QB1 and give him the opportunity to run the offense? Because even if it's in the shotgun or some variation of a pistol set or even the flex bone, he's got to be able to make decisions on the fly. And that could be problematic or beneficial depending upon, how the story goes throughout the course of the season and injuries and everything else.
Yeah.
So go ahead.
Okay. I was thinking we need a one quarterback system. I felt like we kept on going back and forth with R-Line and Lavatai, but they bring two totally different skill sets. Lavatai can pass, R-Line can run the ball well, but you're going to have to find that one QB that can do both. And they both had problems reading the option last year, making decisions that definitely were not good at all. I think Ivan's going to look at everyone and, tell Coach Newberry who's the best. And I wouldn't be surprised if it's neither R-Line or Lavatai starting.
Oh, that's a hot take for real. I mean, and the only reason why I say that is because these guys literally have a much better history with the team. They've been starters for years. And I mean, it's always difficult because the question that you have to ask yourself is, Coach going to go with the guy that has been raised up in the system, or is he going to try the opportunity for the player that's going to give him the most longevity for the next 2 or 3 years, right? Because I can always have a great backup as a senior guy, and he could do great for the team. But if I don't start the right person, I mean, that could cost you, particularly, like you said, in those games that were contentious or close. Like a healthy guy starting is much better than a guy that's been injured most of the season. He's nursing whatever he's nursing, and then he has to, get the push down on the 2-yard line, and he makes a bad decision. I mean, that can cost you the game.
Just
very
couple,
easily.
Just a couple anecdotes from what's happened recently. Number one, in spring ball, Teddy Gleaton was the guy. He took 300 live reps. Lavatai was still hurt. R-Line was injured playing lacrosse. And by the way, it's awesome what Xavier R-Line is doing as a 2-sport guy at Navy. I don't care what happens this year. Like that's amazing what he's doing. Second thing is that it appears that the quarterback competition will be wide open in the summer. I think that's very important. And then third thing is what Grant Chestnut was quoted in The Athletic in the article this spring saying, We're going to spend some time out under center, and we're going to spend some time in the shotgun, and we're going to let our personnel dictate the ratio of under center to shotgun. So you saw a lot of stuff with Lavatai in the gun, who wasn't a north-south runner as much as our line. You saw our line at the end of the season under center running the triple option. And I think Teddy Gleaton is advertised to be able to do both. So they want to be difficult to prepare for, and that's what they've committed to.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about that, and as we talked about before the show, that's kind of like why I wanted to bring you on. Is I was listening to some of your guys, and I guess it was I saw an interview with Grant Chestnut, but I wouldn't swear to that. And it from listening to him, it sounded like he'd gone into the laboratory and drawn up something. I don't want to say it was completely new, but it was pretty new, and it sounded like it was a mix of like flex bone, triple option, and shotgun. Like I found myself wondering if we're finally implementing Coach Ken's hybrid flex bone run and shoot option, which I always thought was a good idea. Ironic that we're going to introduce it this way, but can we do all that stuff? Is there enough focus?
Great. Can I take this? Because the Godfather himself, Paul Johnson, was on the Navy Football Podcast, another great podcast you should check out if you're interested, last year. And he wasn't so subtly criticizing Navy from getting away from the true triple option flex bone. He said you can do a lot of things, or you can do one thing well, or you can do a lot of things not so well.
Yeah.
But Dano, I think the Army-Navy game in 21 is a great example of what you'll probably see from Navy this year. You'll probably see maybe the first drive of the game scripted out of the gun with some stuff that's a little more wide open. Then they move into their base offense. And then the first drive of the second half scripted with something fairly wide open, potentially out of the gun, but going back to the base offense when it comes time to move the ball. Interesting.
Well, I am quite curious to see how it plays out. I know one of the reasons that Army did what it did is because Coach Munkin didn't want to try to run the triple option, flex bone triple option, and have like some plays out of the shotgun. Like I think we've seen them attempt that, and it wasn't working. You can't try to install that sort of in the last 2 weeks of the season and hope it goes well. Well, I am, like I said, I am legitimately curious. A little Schadenfreude. I wouldn't mind seeing you guys struggle with it a little bit, but nevertheless, it pretty interesting question.
Yeah. One of the points was going with just one guy. Who's our quarterback? That's guy, instead of platooning them, right? And we had that. I went back and I had to review because I've been watching a while. But Will Worth was our quarterback up until the Army-Navy game, and he broke his foot. And then AB comes in. Both of them were Marine Corps, by the way, because AB comes in, and he has his first start as an NCAA quarterback against Army in the Army-Navy game. And he did well. He represented himself well, and then he went on to great success in the following years. He came in, I think, as a sophomore, as a youngster, and he finished out. But but we had guys in the system, and that was how it was. And you learned all aspects of it, and you had to be good at both ends. You had to be a good runner, and both AB and Worth were good runners, and they could also air it out too. So, I'm hoping that we go back there instead where we had the guy, and then the next guy off the bench is going to have the same character and qualities in order to run both sides of it. The pass, the option, and the run.
I got to say, I was a big fan of Zach Abees. We were hard on him on the show one time. And do you know one of his friends actually reached out to us and to tell us we were being an asshole to a guy who was a really good guy? That said a lot to me. And we actually apologized later. It's not our purpose here to call out kids who are doing their best on an NCAA field. So, but yeah, I felt like he got kind of a raw deal. I thought he was a good quarterback whose strengths were maybe being a little misrepresented in the offense. Again, that's just one man's opinion.
I mean, you have to think about Navy has been spoiled with quarterback talent. You had Keenan Reynolds, and then you went to Will Worth, which the Will Worth year was unbelievable until the Temple game. Then he got injured even more after the Temple game, the AAC championship game. And then you went to Zach Abey. I have my own opinions. I think he turned the ball over too much, threw too many interceptions. That's just me. However, still a great quarterback. Every quarterback can have their struggles. I think that was his. And then you go to Malcolm Perry, who was generational talent, fast. He could even throw the ball a little bit, but I mean, you could barely catch up to him. He was so fast.
It was very frustrating to watch them. It's like, don't rush this guy. The worst thing you can do is anything other than let him pass. Like, just let him pass the ball.
Yeah, I mean, just look at the Army-Navy game. He didn't even pass. He didn't even pass.
He didn't need to pass. That was my whole point.
It was Carruthers. Carruthers was 1 for 1 for 1 yard and a touchdown.
Yeah.
So, I mean, and 300 yards rushing that game. Beautiful. But ever since Perry left, it has been a struggle. You do have to find that one guy that can, do both, or at least.
So that's a good segue. Let's talk about recruiting a little bit. It's the year is 2023. Army is at 87th with, according to Rivals, with 2 3-stars. Navy's at 91st with no 3 stars. Air Force is at 94th with 3 3-stars. Look at 24/7, which Air Force is at 102nd with 15 3-stars. That's obviously a huge difference. Army's at 116th with 10 3-stars. Navy's at 128th with 6 3-stars. So clearly, there's no consensus in the recruiting circle of sort of how good some of these players are, but still, this is not what we saw 5 years ago. Like, how concerned are you about this? Does this mean anything, or am I just quoting random numbers?
I could really care less about recruiting and numbers.
Yeah, I'm not concerned. I'm not concerned about the numbers. It's the quality of the kid that we get and how we develop them, and they've got to buy into the system, buy into the academy, and put all this other stuff aside, be there for their academics, and be there to play football, period. All the other stuff.
Mark, you look like you might disagree. A bunch of flat-footed, go get them tryhards. This is what we want at Navy football.
I'd love to see the numbers and just understand what it looked like historically and what it looks like now. But I don't think that if you talk to anybody in the yard, I don't think that they would say that their recruiting has fallen off at all. I think they're getting the guys that they hope for, and I don't see too much impact of that.
Yeah.
All right. Fair enough.
Good to see the numbers, see what they look like.
All right. Well,
go ahead. Sorry.
Let's dive into the schedule a little bit, but go ahead, Sam. Your point.
I'll just say, if stars mattered, why would we even play a football game?
All right, that's fair.
Yeah, that is true. So, and speaking of that, we'll jump into the schedule real quick. So you open the season against Notre Dame. That's going to be a tough game. I think that's tough sledding for anybody. That's not
financially rewarding, though. They already sold that stadium out in Ireland.
Yeah, so that's a good game. Then you've got Wagner, Memphis, South Florida, North Texas, Charlotte, the Zoomies, Temple, UAB, East Carolina, SMU, and Army. Closes out the season. It looks like you'll be favored for about 3 of the games, but the line will probably shift or be plus or minus a touchdown for 8 of those games. What does success look like for Navy in 2023? What do you guys think based off your schedule?
A bowl game. I think it's doable.
Okay.
I agree. We got to get to a bowl game, and we got to beat you guys. We got to beat Army. That's the crown jewel, and I know it's the same way for Army. You got to beat us, and that's why we're here today. The 14 years in a row. I was not upset when Army beat us after in year 14 in 2016. I mean, you can ride it so long, and it made the game better. It made the game better, and we, I mean, I love Army football every day but one. Every day but one. Rob knows it.
That's true.
That's how it is. And by the way, I'll be over there in Dublin. I don't know if I'll be able to really see the game, but I'll be there for the game against Notre Dame. So I'll make a novena, light a candle.
Is this because you have nosebleed seats, or because you're just going to be in Ireland watching in some sports bar?
I got tickets from somebody, and I'll be in the stadium.
Cool. Mark, you got thoughts?
I think 6-6 would be an even season. I think 7-5 would be a success. Okay. I'm looking at the Thursday night game at Memphis early in the season in week 4 as a real test for them. I think it's a winnable game, but that would be a very difficult game. And there's 4 games at the end of the season where they play teams that, according to the rating, are in the top half of Navy football of the FBS teams. You have UAB, East Carolina, SMU, and Army, all that are within 12 or 15 points of ranking. And so they're going to have to win the 3 games against Temple, Charlotte, and Wagner, and then they're going to have to put together 4 wins between South Florida, UAB, East Carolina, SMU, and Army. So I think I have them. I think 7-5 is definitely a successful season for them. I think with some struggles, they'll go 6-6.
Well, for what it's worth, S&P plus, SP plus likes your chances. Okay, I mean you're within 3 points of East Carolina, Army, UAB, and actually favored against Temple, South Florida, and Charlotte. And they have Navy at -11. They have East Carolina at -8. But I've seen you guys play East Carolina enough to know that game is going to be close. Anybody with anywhere within a touchdown in the preseason is, that's like a statistic. I don't take too much away from that. So anyway,
the thing that I
Rob,
think is favorable. Sorry, I was just going to say that the thing that I think is favorable for Navy's schedule is the schedule gets much tougher in those last 4 games, and Navy gets better in November historically, and so I think that will really play to their advantage.
Interesting.
Good point.
Yeah,
yep.
That's fair.
Anything else you guys want to tell us?
Just so we're off on.
I'll say one thing.
Yeah, go ahead.
We're just happy to be here, and you're up. Go, man. You're on.
I was going to say thanks for having us, but as much as I cannot imagine a Navy game without Ken Niumatalolo on the sideline, I cannot imagine watching Army out of the shotgun on 3rd and 3. I won't get used to it.
It's so I went to the spring game and I saw them running the new offense, and I was really curious to see what they were going to do on short yardage. And they came up to 3rd and 1. They might even run a 4th and 1. And damn if they weren't in the shotgun. And that is my biggest concern going into this year. It was mind blowing. And this is a whole nother podcast of why they went to this and like some of the ins and outs. And that's 20 minutes. That's a different show. But I am totally curious to see what it looks like, and if that's what they actually do in short yardage situations. As I agree with you, it is pretty weird.
Yeah. So moving on to speaking of Army and changes to the offense, one of the things that we're talking about is the offense going to be a lot more potent? I know there's a lot of people that shed a tear when Army said they were going to the shotgun and we're going to get rid of the fullback. And I am a Mike Allstott fan. So those of you that are old enough to remember that guy, I love fullback, giant neck roll, 3 yards in a cloud of dust. However, I think, what Coach Thatcher has said up until this point is, hey, we're not going to get away from the core of what Army is. We just want to be able to throw when we want to versus having to need to. And so that changes kind of the calculus on it. Only time will tell. But moving on to the SP Plus comparison, we've got some serious roads to hoe when you look at LSU. Where the projected line is going to be 37.
Hold on, Rob. Before we go into Army stuff, thank you guys for coming on. You're welcome to stick around for the Army discussion. But Dave, I know you had stuff going on, and so if you need to drop off, let me just tell you that we are going to fully segue into Army schedule comparison and what success looks like for Army. As I said, you're welcome to hang out, but I know some of you guys have stuff to do. So before we sort of transition, let's take that opportunity.
Will we have the opportunity
Thank you guys.
to talk about
Sure.
our good friends out there in Colorado Springs?
Yeah.
I'll stay.
We'll push that up to the top. Okay. So one of the things that we're having about, and we're going to talk about it during the conference realignment piece, but we'll move it up to the top right now. And let's talk about the Zoomies, right? It's difficult. And here's your chance to dunk on them because, we always dunk on the Air Force guys because when they become older service, like over 100 years, then we may actually care about what they have to say. But, Air Force considers themselves critical to the rivalry of college football. I think the Commander-in-Chief's Trophy Series is very, very helpful. I mean, it does bring eyes to the game, but does Air Force really matter? I mean, as far as I'm concerned, they're a young team. They play in the Mountain West. Nobody wants to, stay up until midnight every weekend to watch these clowns play when they have a night game. But I want to open the floor to Dave because I know he has some pretty serious thoughts about these cats and kind of talk about what is going on with the Air Force Academy, or at least get some opinions from some Navy fans on what they think about the team out west.
They so want to be part of it. They want to be part of what we have, Army, Navy, and they're not going to be. Not ever, not today, not tomorrow, not next year, never. They're just not going to make it. My buddy was out there in Colorado Springs years ago when he was a battalion officer, and he was the O rep for the football team, and they're having some reception there in the hotel they were staying at, and they had all the Air Force fans were with them. And so he gets on the elevator, and he's in his greens and everything, and in comes the Air Force grads and their brides and everything, and they're just running their mouth, and they see this. Oh, aren't you worried? Aren't you worried? I mean, we're just going to do this, and this. And as the elevator doors opened, and he got ready to step off, he turned around and said, "Ladies, gentlemen, just remember, this isn't Army Navy." And he walked away. Because they so want to be part of it, and what they're doing with red shirting and this whole COVID thing, and they have their lack of military standards. Take a look at their face shots in their football program. I mean, I don't know what they're doing, but they're definitely not a military academy, if you will. It's like, Rob, you can help me out on this.
Yeah, I generally think, like, look, when it feels like they're on like relaxed grooming standards, and there's a lot of kind of wiggle room for the football team. And I think one of the differences between, and I can only speak for Army, is we focus in on the officership. Like, not only are you playing intercollegiate athletics, but you need to focus on being an officer on the tail end. I have met very few Air Force grads after I took the uniform off that I actually liked. I mean, usually you can deal with those guys. I had a super cool roommate when we were cadets, but that was because we were cadets. Like, when you live with somebody, you have a different perspective on who they are, but it doesn't necessarily speak to the force as a whole. And as a guy that went to Air CGSC, it's a marked difference between the officer corps and the Army and the Air Force, partially because of just the change in traditions. They're a very technologically enabled force, so they like planes and they like planes, right? If you're a pointy nose fighter jock, you got it.
It's okay, Rob. I'm sure they like trains too.
I doubt it. But but as Air Force dudes, I say this all the time. My 3 friends wouldn't allow me to go to the Air Force Academy or join the Air Force, and those are pride, dignity, and respect. And so I would probably not be the biggest Air Force fan. I've always found it kind of suspect that they've been playing a seasonal schedule year in, year out, and they do pretty well, in the Mountain West. But when did they ever rise to competition? And you look at last year's bowl game, they played an emaciated Baylor team and they won, but it was an emaciated Baylor team that basically had the wind sucked out of them in the TCU game, so they were still licking their wounds from some other stuff earlier in the season. And again, it's Air Force, man. Just, I can't be a fan of those guys. It's like teams that I dislike, Navy, Michigan, and Air Force is probably on the lowest tier of teams that I don't care for.
Didn't Calhoun blow off Coach Monken for a post-game handshake this last time around?
Yeah, he did, and that's kind of indicative of the whole program. You know what I mean?
Exactly right.
It's exactly a petty thing. That was aggravating. Yeah. All right, let's move on, Rob. Let's get into the schedule. Dave, are you going to stick around for the discussion of Army schedule? You don't have to. It's up to you.
No, I'm gonna leave. I have some very important things to do as the field monitor. And thanks so much, Rob. I'll get up with you as soon and talk to you soon. Okay.
All right, man.
Thank you for coming on.
Every day but one. Every day but one. Love you guys. See you later. Bye.
All right. Cheers. Yeah. So moving on to the Army schedule. Army's got LSU, which is 25.2 points ahead of us on the S&P. Syracuse. That's always going to be.
They're 37 points ahead of us. They're 25 points ahead of average. So we ran the SP Plus numbers that they were released last month, and then figured out projected lines from there. So LSU we're projecting to be a 37-point favorite in that game. Syracuse a 17-point favorite. UTSA a 15-point favorite, and then after that, you got some winnable games.
Yeah. Well, I think the LSU game is going to be interesting because, again, with the new offense, it's going to be hard to prepare for, and so. That's that's the saving grace of being a service academy with an independent schedule is, like you said, when people have a chance to kind of G2 you, it makes it a little bit more difficult. But like LSU, if they were smart, like most of their defensive reps were trying to figure out how to defend against the flex bone, and then we're going to throw something different at them. So, opportunity there, take Army to cover. I mean, I don't think they're going to get blown out by almost 40 points. I don't buy that. I think the team is better than that, but it is LSU, and LSU they played like a bunch of drunken Bengal Tigers last year, man. Like, you didn't know if they were going to win or lose until they were the game.
They were going to beat Alabama or lose to Tennessee by 50. One of those two things was definitely going to happen.
Yeah.
I mean, it was year one of Brian Kelly, who
that's true.
Interesting guy. His tenure at Notre Dame was definitely interesting, to say the least. But I don't know. I mean, LSU, I got high hopes for him. I don't want to say they'll blow you guys out just because, I cover Navy or whatever, but I don't like that Army changed their offense, because I think with that independent schedule, that flex bone gave them a massive advantage.
Yes, I agree.
I don't know if the shotgun does that.
We had a Facebook user ask how much Oklahoma was favored by in 2018, and it was about the same amount. Listen, the triple option out of the bunch set is definitely a weird thing for, D linemen to prepare for, who are trying to go pro. They're trying to get upfield and attack the quarterback. And if you're playing against the bunch set triple option, and specifically against the fullback dive, like getting upfield is kind of counterproductive. The new offense is much more predicated on getting to the outside and isolated one-on-one against a cornerback who may or may not be able to tackle. The problem being that LSU probably does have cornerbacks who can tackle. So we'll see how that goes. I mean, maybe it goes well. It certainly is not impossible. It's a very interesting offense. It's not like nobody ever moves the ball on those guys, but we'll see how they tackle.
I will just say this: it'll be closer than the experts think, and that's the typical college cliche. But Coach Monken is due a Power 5 upset. Is it going to be LSU? I can't say that with certainty, but like I was holding on for in the 2020 season, I knew that Army was going to upset freaking Michigan, and they didn't play. Because of COVID. Because I think that would have been the game.
Oklahoma.
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I think that would have been the upset that
at Mikey Stadium.
That's been brewing for that's been brewing for a while. I think Army is due a Power 5 upside. It's just like with Navy opening up against Notre Dame. Not to say that it can't happen, but those teams tend to play those guys a little bit better because Dano and I were at the academy when we were a half inch away from beating Notre Dame at Giant Stadium on national television. And that was freaking 165-pound Ivory Covington, like wherever that guy is, I will buy him a beer and then slap it out of his hand for making a great play, and then Army losing to those guys. But I think Army's going to be, the line will be a touchdown or greater for 7 of the games. And like Navy, they'll be favored in probably about 3 of them.
Well, just on the basis of SP Plus, our schedule is very similar to Navy's, right? We were favored straight up in 3 games, including against the mids, although that's a 2-point line. And, SP Plus with the triple option at this point in the season is pretty speculative, especially for a game in December. But they're giving Air Force a field goal. Coastal Carolina, 1.5. Can't believe how much those guys have fallen off. Boston College, at almost 2 points. Troy should be favored by about a touchdown. That's at Mikey Stadium, so we'll see. And we'll see if UTSA is really as good as, these guys are saying UTSA might win the American, which is not impossible, but that would be a hell of a step up for them.
Like, is Frank Harris coming back? Is he like
Frank Harris is back?
Yeah, he's back for his 17th year of college football.
Come on, guys.
The one thing is they don't have Sincere McCormick anymore, and I think he really helped Frank Harris. Take the load off of Frank Harris.
Yeah, he did take a lot of weight.
Special.
I guess Frank Harris wasn't going to make it in the NFL, so it's like, would you rather play at UTSA on NIL money or go to the XFL? And unfortunately, the XFL isn't paying what NIL at UTSA pays, for better or worse. So
yeah, clearly
they got to work on that.
So, Dano, what's your favorite line on the list so far this season? What do you think is the best game, at least on paper right now, for Army?
I mean, Army plus 5.5 at versus Troy at home. I would bet that every day. Army should have beat them last year. They missed a freaking 40-yard field goal.
Yeah,
if they hit that field goal, everything we talk about with last season is completely different.
Yeah, that would have been bowl game and a couple other things.
Yeah, a bunch of dominoes would have fallen with that kick, for better or worse.
Yeah,
I mean, you hate to hate on that kid because he made the game winner against Navy, and we've all been in that situation where we've come up short. But I'm just saying, like, that one kick changed the season quite a bit.
Yeah, and it's funny how it played out, but I think like missing that kick early in the season kind of set the stage for how the season ended.
Sure,
so,
absolutely.
That's like a storybook. That's like something that you write in a movie, right? It looked like a movie script. Like, oh, he misses a 40-yarder that costs him, a very important game, and then he wins the one that really matters. In the waning seconds of the double overtime, it kind of writes itself.
Sure. I mean, but screw the movies. We could have just hit both kicks. Just saying.
True statement. Yeah, no, he did get recruited to kick. So moving on. All right, so we have a new sponsor here at As for Football, and they're really not a new sponsor because they've been around for a year. They're called BuyerBarn.com. Buyer Barn was co-founded by 97 graduate Dan Robinson. Dan ran a traditional co-op and farm auction for many, many years, and then he realized like there's got to be a better way of doing this and modernize it into the 21st century. So Dan and his co-founder Dino took their experience in IT and development and came up with the world's first farm-to-farm online auctions and sales platform. So it's basically eBay for farm animals. Buyer Barn reduces health issues by reducing animal and owner contact, reduces animal fraud through a buyer-seller rating system, fully integrated auction platform with secure payments, convenient to buy and sell on your own time, and better market pricing because of the wider audience. Think about eBay versus a yard sale. So great opportunity. They're dedicated to helping small farmers in America and providing a special discount to military veterans who assist them in the small farm and family auction. Long story short, go to buyerbarn.com or email them at info@buyerbarn.com to find out more. Go to the Ask for Football website. There's a tab on the side. Click on it, and then you can buy your goods.
Go to Buyer Barn right now. We need them to re-up as a sponsor on this show. I have no idea how they're doing, but go there right now and sell your goats, chickens, everything but horses.
That's right. They do everything but horses. And we're trying to set up the Beat Navy goat roast using buyerbarn.com. So moving on. Conference realignment. Man, there's so much craziness going on. Like, the college football landscape is going to be insane come 2024 and beyond. Like, we had a really good discussion at the Army football show with Mike Buddy talking about maintaining your independence as a college football program. I think there's some advantages to that, and we've already talked about those. But one could argue that being in a conference could be costly. And a perfect example is the 2016 Army-Navy game. And we talked about that earlier, just all the injuries that led up, like when your QB1 goes down in the AAC championship game, and then you've got a rivalry game the week after. It doesn't give you too much time to prepare. And I think there was a bye in between there as well. So, like, if you can't recover in 2 weeks in college football, you're hurt. That's not an injury or that you could play with. So I think that really affected it. But conference realignment is going to be insane. Right. And when I say insane, I mean, it's going to be crazy. So the Power Five is going to go through a great shakeup because there's teams flying all over the country. And really, most of it is going to be predicated on whether or not they can get out of their TV contracts with their previous conference is the main discriminator for all of these. So starting with the SEC gains Oklahoma and Texas. And like, that's really all they have. I would recommend, if they're going to do that, they need to dump Vandy and South Carolina and send them to the American, because, I mean,
South Carolina was good last year. They beat Tennessee. Dude, they're not leaving the SEC. Vandy, I agree with you, but
look, Spencer Rattler caught fire for like 3 games.
Those were important games.
Yes, but I just don't think that he's going to be able to shoulder the load. The whole season.
The old ball coach is rolling over in his grave, even though he's still alive. But come on, man, Spurrier's hair is on fire right now.
True statement. However, I still think that would be the best move for them, just to keep the divisions balanced. So what are they going to do? Three divisions of 4 or 6 or whatever? Like, there's so many teams trying to move. It doesn't make any sense. So
they got to throw Mizzou out. Mizzou hasn't done anything lately.
Yeah, that's true. And that's another one that could probably go too. So the Big 12, Coach Prime is still making moves, man. This guy is like going back to the future. So the Colorado Buffaloes are trying to move back to the Big 12 after they figure out a way again to bust that TV contract with the Pac-12 that they just signed. It's going to be crazy to see how that shakes out because you've got Utah, Arizona, and Arizona State have also been approached by the Big 12. So they're talking about leaving. And again, with the loss of Oklahoma and Texas, like, how does that look? And they're bringing in BYU, Central Florida, Cincy, and Houston. So I think those teams will be good additions for the Big 12. The Big 12 is always kind of weird. It'll be interesting to see how Luke Fickell does in a conference that doesn't play defense. I mean, because Cincinnati does okay offensively every year, but like if you throw them in that Big 12 defensive pool, who knows what's going to happen with that? You know, I think that'll be interesting. AAC or the ACC, I'm sorry, University of Miami and Florida State have teased leaving and going to the Big 10. Like,
that's a crime. They need to arrest the athletic directors immediately and put them in prison because that is a crime.
Like, what is like literally what is going on? So if that happens,
I cannot get behind that under any reason.
Like, but if it happens, you're looking at a 14-team Big 10, right? So that means you're adding UCLA, USC, Miami, and Florida State. Like, when does the madness stop? And that's the reality of it is because again, I think everybody understands the Big 10 is a central region. You can catch the games, you know, on either coast at a reasonable hour, and so there's some advantages to being in the, you know, in the Big 10. However, you know, if I'm LSU or
they're going to relegate the Horned Frogs a year after they won the conference.
Yeah, exactly. Or, you know, think about it. If you're USC and UCLA leaving the Pac-12, that's good for probably TV time because you're playing against some big time opponents
smoked
on regular TV. But when it hits October, it's a wrap, man. Like those kids grew up in LA. Like they're going to be freezing to death.
They're going to get smoked. They need to worry about beating Colorado, much less Michigan.
Right. Well, here's the other part though, like, but we're seeing the trend coming out of Los Angeles. Like everybody is leaving LA, right? To include the pro teams. Like everybody is out. Like, hey, we're dropping a thermite on this thing and walking out the door because it just doesn't matter. Like the pro teams have left too. So you've lost the Rams, you've lost the Raiders, and everybody else is kind of inching towards Vegas. One, because it's probably a better destination than LA. But the other part of it is it's like, hey, there's sports betting and gambling and all this other crazy stuff that goes on in the area. All right, so moving on to the American. The American loses UCF, Cincy, and Houston. Looks to pick up UAB, Charlotte, FAU, North Texas, UTSA, and Rice. So the American Conference will become the Texas Light Conference.
I mean, that's Conference USA where I grew up. I don't know.
Yeah. I'll give my 2 cents, and then I'm gonna have to hop off.
All right, no worries.
Sure, absolutely.
The AAC, it's going to be interesting. I think some of the programs that they added, not too bad. I mean, North Texas, San Antonio. I mean, they did pretty well in football. But just in terms of the AAC in general, not just football, basketball and everything, they have massively downgraded. And it's going to be interesting to see, you know, who's going to really want to watch American basketball, American football. Is the American really going to be the Power 6 conference with these teams? I don't think so.
Yeah.
So everyone's
I agree with
moving,
you about that.
And it stinks because you're losing a lot of rivalries. It used to be geographically based, and I feel like that got the fans, you know, energized. You had bragging rights, and all of a sudden it's like you got Big 10 teams going, ooh, we beat USC, we beat UCLA. Like, you can't really brag. There's no one to brag to. That's one of the great things about college sports. You're able to brag. You have a team, you have a college, and you were able to brag that you know your next door neighbor, you know, maybe he's a Michigan fan, you're an Ohio State fan. You can go, beat you guys. You can't really do that as much now.
I got a question for you. I'm jumping ahead here. Conference USA has just added Jacksonville State, which came up from the FCS, but kicked ass. Liberty, they have had some stuff. Is that better than the top of the American Conference now? I mean, I don't know if you noticed, but Liberty has pretty good football team year in, year out.
They're pretty solid.
Liberty's good. Jamie Chadwell went there now. I think he's going to do well. And Liberty's also got a pretty good basketball team. So
interesting. Okay.
I think that's a good ad for Conference USA. I think Conference USA, you know, they lost some teams, but I think adding Liberty's a big win, and Jacksonville State, I think they're up and coming. So I don't know. There's just a lot with conference realignment that I don't think anybody knows what to think. We'll just have to see how it plays out.
Yeah, for sure. Well, Sam, we appreciate you. I know you said you got to jump, but thanks for coming on. It was awesome having you on.
This was a good show. I'm really pleased with how it came out. So thank you very much.
Yes, thank you.
All right. So 2 last things, and then we'll hit you for your favorite thing, Dano. Sunbelt.
All right.
Sunbelt's got JMU, Southern Miss, ODU, and Marshall. Marshall is leaving the MAC and going to the Sunbelt. I think that's actually a good move. It would have been a more solid move back when they had a young man by the name of Randy Moss playing for them. But I think it'll be interesting to see with all these adjustments how it impacts recruiting, because I know that was one of the big problems that particularly, the LA teams or the California teams were complaining about was, the folks from the Big Ten coming out west and recruiting, in that the skill players from, California. So I think that was a big deal. But
so for what it's worth, either the Sun Belt or the Mountain West is the new Power 6 conference. Those conferences are obviously on their face stronger than the American at this point. I mean, without UCF and Cincy and Houston, forget about it. I mean, Memphis is still a good team, don't get me wrong, but Memphis versus JMU or Coastal Carolina, even Marshall, that's those are close games.
That's some stiff competition. And really the only thing that hurt JMU last year was the fact that they had just come up and they weren't eligible for a bowl, right? Because JMU looked great. Like just about every game that they played, they were
real good.
They're a pretty stout team. So Dano, you have a favorite thing this week, or do we just need to wrap the show?
Dude, it was a Navy show. I drank my entire glass of wine. Let's just be happy that it's over. Don't be sad that it happened. Be happy that it's over.
Yeah, that's fair. Hey guys, and like I said, and for those of you guys that didn't see my note in the Firsty Club, bottom line is this is like fair catches on punts in the NFL. Either it works or it doesn't. And if it doesn't work, we're going to abandon it. So again, for Dano Ikebesa calling out of Coastal Connecticut, I am Rob, the Angry Colonel, and this has been the College Football Roundtable, and we will see you guys next week. Thanks.
Beat Navy.
Beat them. Thanks for listening to the Ask for Football College Football Roundtable. Tune in next week as the AFF team brings you more hot takes and college football analysis. We'd like to thank our sponsor, BuyerBarn.com. BuyerBarn.com is the world's first platform to perform online auctions and sales for farm animals. BuyerBarn.com is dedicated to helping small farmers in America and are extending a special discount to military veterans who want to help in the revolution of the family farm. Go to BuyerBarn.com/military. That's BuyerBarn.com, BYREBARN.com to learn more and to get started, or email them at info@BuyerBarn.com. Thanks again for listening to Ask for Football College Football Roundtable, and as always, beat Navy.